Hey everyone, it's Miss Levy, and I'm here to teach you today about Chapter 5, Key Issue 4, and why people preserve local languages. Remember, we talked about that within culture, the two most important culture traits are religion and language. And so once a language goes extinct, then typically the culture is not far behind. So most groups who are trying to preserve their culture or revive their culture, they do so also by trying to preserve their language and reviving their language. So today we're going to learn about the factors being used or the methods being used in the world today to revive that minority local language. Please have access to the worksheet that is on Google Classroom, where you're going to complete this in the table. So this presentation today is the information that you will complete in the actual table. So when we look at this factor method 1 in terms of how and who and where groups are trying to preserve their or revive their minority languages, one way they're doing that is the use of government policies. It makes sense if you were trying to revive a language that you would try to use your government and all the government resources and laws and policies in order to do so. Currently, they're doing this in the European Union, mainly to revive those original Celtic languages. Remember, the Celtic groups were the original occupants of England prior to the Germanic tribes invading. So how and why and where is this happening? Well, the governments want to preserve their local diversity. So the European Union has set up the European Bureau of Lesser Used Languages. It's based in Dublin, Ireland. And what they do is to preserve local languages, you need money. So the governments there, the European Union, is providing the financial support for the preservation of the 24 languages. Most languages belong to that Celtic branch of the early people there that would have been part of the Indo-European language family. And linguists expect hundreds to go extinct, but 300 will stay safe because of a large number of speakers and this government support. So again, on this chart, when we're looking at the factor, the method, the first is the use of government policies. It makes sense that you would use the government because the government has access to resources and access to money and policies and laws. Currently, they're doing that in the European Union, mainly to revive these original Celtic languages. So please, in your first box on your chart, completing this in your notebook, you're going to explain how, where, and why this is actually happening. Next factor or method that they're using currently in the world to revive minority languages is that they've used nationalism or national identity when creating Israel in order to revive Hebrew. So what did they actually do? They used nationalism and the national identity. Where did this occur? This occurred in Israel. What language was revived? Hebrew. Hebrew was extinct but was recently revived. Was only used for Jewish religious services. Israel was established in 1948. Initially, they had two official languages, Hebrew and Arabic. And so many people, Jews, were moving back, returning to Israel from all over the world, and they spoke all different languages. And so they were concerned about a way to unify the people beyond their common religious beliefs. And so politically, they believed that one of the best unifying elements would be if they revived Hebrew. So they had determined that no other language could symbolically unify the cultural groups. The words were created for thousands of objects and inventions unknown in biblical times. So Ben Yehuda, Eliezer Ben Yehuda, he invented 4,000 new Hebrew words and created the first modern Hebrew dictionary. So again, second way that groups in the real world are trying to revive minority languages, extinct minority languages, is they've done this in Israel. And the way that they did that was the use of nationalism and national identity. The language revived was Hebrew. And this is how they did that. Number 3, the use of non-government groups. So non-government groups would be like libraries, language societies, and schools. So another way that, if you think about it, that you would try to revive and promote the use of some extinct language, minority language, would be is if you tried to get libraries and language societies in schools. Obviously, you need a location to teach it. This is currently happening in the UK and throughout Europe. And again, they're trying to revive many of these Celtic languages. So how and why and where is this happening? Celtic was the major language in Britain and England before the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes came with the Germanic languages. So the Welsh is being revived in Wales. The Welsh Language Society and Britain's 1980 Education Act made Welsh mandatory subject in schools. So people have to learn it in schools in Wales. And they added Welsh history and music. They've also put up road signs in Welsh. And the BBC, which is the British broadcast station, British Broadcast Communication, has the TV and radio programs also in Welsh. So these are all non-government groups like schools and libraries, media, and things like putting up road signs. So this is Welsh in Wales. Gaelic in Ireland, they're trying to use music that's being sung in Gaelic. Irish really want to distinguish from the English, so they're also teaching Gaelic in schools. And Cornish in Cornwall. Cornish is now taught in grade schools, evening classes for adults, church services, and banks are even beginning to accept cat checks in Cornish. But like what ends up happening, and oftentimes whenever you're trying to revive what is already extinct, there's some disagreement over the spelling between the traditionalists and the modernists. So again, this is the third way that in the real world they're trying to revive an extinct minority language. Is they're doing this in Europe, in the UK mainly. They're reviving the Celtic languages by using non-government groups like libraries, language societies, schools, and media. These are the specific languages and locations and how they're doing it. Let's talk about factor method 4. Just like you learn oftentimes through technology, they're trying to use technology to revive various languages that are extinct. So currently in Europe and the UK, they're again trying to revive these Celtic languages. So how and why and where is it happening? The BBC, again, the British Broadcasting, they're using TV and radio. Musicians are producing music in languages. And modern digital technology like Twitter and Facebook allows for easier diffusion of information and better access. They're also using technology like Rosetta Stone, where you can learn on tape or by listening podcasts and such as well. So one of the best ways that they're trying to now revive extinct minority languages is through the use of technology. So that it's more accessible to people, and they're doing this in the UK to revive the Celtic languages mainly. Next, another method, another way that they are trying to revive is through they're creating multilingual states. So these languages that have been extinct, especially that have become extinct because they were influenced by a more dominant group, one of the ways that they're trying to revive it is to create the multilingual state. They're doing this in Belgium, mainly because they want to revive the Flemish languages and preserve the Flemish language. So Belgium is actually a divided state. You have the Walloons in the south who speak French and the Flemings in the north who speak Flemish, and there's much contention between the two groups. This divides the country also with economic differences. Historically, the Walloons, who are in the south who speak French, dominated, and French was the official language. And so when there's a dominating group, typically the lesser, the minority language, it will tend to fade away. So what the government has done is they've divided the country into two regions, Flanders and Wallonia. And these two regions act fairly independently and autonomously. And those languages are revived and alive and promoted in both of these two main regions. Each of these regions elects an assembly for cultural affairs, public health, road construction, and urban development. So they could also revive and preserve a minority language by creating a multilingual state like they've done in Belgium to preserve Flemish because the dominant language is mainly French. Next, let's talk about factor method number 6. Another way that they are in the real world today, mainly in Europe, trying to preserve and promote the usage of minority languages is in Switzerland. They've transitioned to a decentralized government, meaning that they've given more political power to the local governments than the central government. Interestingly enough, Switzerland's actually a very multicultural country. There are 4 main groups. We have the French, the Italian, the German, and the Romanish who dominate in Switzerland. And so to promote the minority languages and to preserve those mainly Romanish, they've created this decentralized government, meaning that they have divided power between the regions and the federal government. So between the regional and the federal government. And the reason why they've done this is because the local authorities hold most of the power. The decisions are often made by voter referendum, meaning that the voters literally vote to see if they would like to make changes to their laws. And in Switzerland, they've created 4 official languages: French, Italian, German, and Romanish. This is a way of preserving and promoting the usage of all of these languages, especially Romanish, which would be the minority language there. Method number 7, the final one, is a lot of groups have, in order to promote their minority language or revive their minority language, you see this in many separatist groups. This is currently in Spain with the Basque language and the Basque separatist group. The Basque group, they want to have their own country in northern Spain. And a separatist group, that means they're truly trying to separate away from the government. So they're acting out against the government. And so the reason why this is happening is because Basque, the language, it developed as an isolated language, means that it's unrelated to any other language. So it's not attached to a language family or a language tree. And it's the only language spoken in Europe that was from before the arrival of the Indo-European speaker. So this is before the superfamily even is the Basque. They live in the mountains of northern Spain and southwest France, and it's spoken by 1 million people, so it is thriving. The Basque people are more radical and they wish for more independence and to separate from France and Spain. They actually act out against the government. So this is another way that in reality it's a factor in how they're actually promoting minority languages, is that you see this with these separatist groups. It's a way of unifying their own people and differentiating themselves from those of the majority. So again, when we look at how they are trying to promote and revive the usage of language diversity and minority languages and revive modern or minority languages in the world today, these are our 7 ways that they are doing this. The first way they're doing it is the use of government policies, like they're doing in the EU with mainly the Celtic languages. They also have used nationalism and national identity. They did this in Israel when they revived Hebrew. Third, they've used non-government groups like libraries, language societies, schools, and media to revive and promote the usage of minority languages. They've done this also in the UK with trying to revive those Celtic languages. In addition, they're using technology to diffuse and to disseminate the information. Also, it allows it to be more accessible, like Rosetta Stone, and music and podcasts, and using social media to allow people to be able to access this for learning purposes. They're doing this also in the UK with the Celtic languages. We've seen the creation of multilingual states, like in Belgium, mainly with French and the Flemish languages. They've also done this in Canada with French and English, and also some of the indigenous languages. In addition, you see the transition to a decentralized government, so more power, shared power between the local and regional governments, like they've done in Switzerland, to preserve Romanish mainly, but also to promote French, Italian, and German. And finally, you see this with the creation, the emergence, the influence of separatist groups, like in Spain with the Basque and the Basque language. Please finish up the questions that are following the chart.